Then I'm very happy to be here at Mount Ennon again, one of our great churches in the land, and pastored by one of our great ministers and pastors and teachers, a young man that has come into his own, and we're so proud of Reverend Delman Coates. Reverend Coates sits on our national board at National Action Network, and I've known him a few years, and he has shown the courage and vision of a real spiritual giant. And we have become even closer, and anything he asks of me, I do. I was teasing my friend Lamel McMorris, who's with us, who's mutually a friend of both, that Delman now is introducing me from Greece. But I told Bro Washington, y'all got to get rid of them fat pictures. I done lost weight since them pictures. This is the new Al here this morning. But in these times, and any student of the Bible know that God calls people for the time in which he uses them. And there's no such thing as a prophet that is a prophet in a time other than what they're in. God called Moses at the time of Egyptian bondage. He didn't call Moses to rehash what he had done with Abraham. And a lot of us have timed out of our effectiveness because we live in the past like we doubt that God can do something in the present. One of the reasons I respect Pastor Coates so is he's in these times. Some of us are fighting old battles that have already been fought. Some of y'all are dealing with old situations in your lives that's already been resolved. Some of y'all's over old friendships, folk gone on, and you still mad. Some of us mad at folk 30 years and forgot what we mad about, just know we mad. Not speaking to each other, forgot why y'all ain't speaking to each other, but we hold the past. God wants those that are relevant in the time he called them. Because he didn't make a mistake to choose to bring you in the world at the time he did. So we must learn from our history only to be effective in the present. I was talking to some students a couple of weeks ago in North Carolina. I went to speak at Fayetteville State University. And during the Q&A, they were saying to me, well, Reverend Al, back in the day, in the civil rights days, da-da-da-da-da, and another one got up. I said, well, first of all, let's be real clear. The back in the day stuff is relative because I was too young to go to Selma. I wasn't but 8 years old when Selma happened. But unless you are 8 months old, you was alive when Trayvon Martin happened. Unless you under 8, you was alive when Katrina happened. Don't act like everything happened back in the day. Stuff's still happening. And the folk in the 60s, we're talking about back in the day, in the 40s. Because back in the day is a way to relieve you from responsibility from today. So the best way to act like you are not irrelevant when times are challenging is to act like it was worse back in the day so you don't have to deal with what is bad right now. Right now, we 25 days before an election with all of the issues that have faced our people forever is starkly there. Right now. Right now, they're talking about states' rights. Right now, they're talking about changing how we can vote. Just Wednesday, I was at the Supreme Court where they're getting ready to rule on affirmative action. And if they take race out of the whole setup of higher education, they will take race then out of diversity jobs and contracts, set aside, all of that. And a lot of y'all that moved out of Washington to the county going to be moving back in, because a lot of us got jobs and contracts based on that, and if race can't be a factor, all of that's going to be wiped out in a year. So I'm not talking about back in the day, I'm talking about right now. And if you don't have people that speak to that and that know how to deal with principle above these small political partisan backbiting, then they're not effective in these times. And a lot of us don't understand that God uses vision. There's never been anyone God called that wasn't questioned by his own. I know when we were dealing with this question here in Maryland that y'all are dealing with on marriage inequality, I talked with Reverend Coates, stood with him. I said that a lot of folk are not going to understand, but it's not about, we're not sanctioning something we don't agree with, but we're making sure that no one can come after us. If they make a law against what somebody believes, even if I don't believe it, they can make a law against me being a Baptist. He said, yeah, and he and Lamel, and I told, well, you know, you're right, Reverend, but some folk ain't going to believe. Some folk got to the Red Sea and turned on Moses. Don't act like everybody was rah-rah Moses. Moses brought them out of bondage, and they had not even got out of bondage. Got to the Red Sea, and some Uncle Tom Israelites turned on Moses. But when the waters of the Red Sea was open, the ones that were saying, wasn't there enough graves in Egypt, they were the first one going up that dry land, getting out of there. Sometimes you got to help those that hurt you. And that's part of the burden that we bear. Let me go to the book of Philippians, since Delman's over there in Philippia. Fourth chapter, beginning at the 6th verse. It reads, do not worry about anything, but in everything by prayer and supplication with thanksgiving, let your requests be known to God. And the peace of God, which surpasses all understanding, will guard your hearts and your minds in Christ Jesus. Finally, beloved, whatsoever is true, whatsoever is honorable, whatsoever is just, whatsoever is pure, whatever is pleasing, whatever is commendable, if there is any excellence, if there is any worthy of praise, think about these things. Keep on doing these things. Keep on doing the things that you have learned and received and heard and seen in me. And the God of peace will be with you. May God add a blessing to the reading of his word. I want to use for a thought, think on these things. Think on these things. About a year ago, I went at the behest of my 2 daughters to the Apple store and bought an iPhone. And trying to be up to date, they got these new gadgets every year. So I just try to stay with the gadgets I already know, but they convinced me to get this iPhone. And the challenge is, once you get it, you look like you're in with whatever the going on is, but then you got to learn how to operate it. just having the instrument is not operating the instrument. And if you don't really study how it works, you will end up messing up more than you end up advancing. Now, it is true, it can do more than the old cell phones, but it can only do more if you know how to use it. And by my not knowing how to use it, I was dropping calls and calling folk that I didn't know I called. Because you can hit the wrong thing and you be done call somebody, and then after you find out you done called them, you hope you wasn't saying the wrong thing that they was listening to. Because they done heard everything you said because you done dialed them. Then you got where you can take the weather down or take dates down. And now they got the Instagram where you can take a picture and send it all over to whoever's following, all kind of stuff. Learning how this instrument worked. Well, as I thought about this, Minister Jones, many of us have the same problem with our own brains. God has given us a tremendous instrument that most of us never sit and think about how it works. Most of us never ever thought about how we deal with our own thoughts in our own brain. It's amazing that we can program a computer but never program our own mentality. And your brain, your thoughts, your emotions operate just like a machine. It will result in whatever you program it to. Many of us are available for any nonsense because we are not programmed against it. Some people come to church to get a word. Some folk come to church because it's a custom. Some folk come to church to see who else is in church. Some folk come to church to hear the latest gossip. Some folk come to church for some mess. Some folk come to church for a variety of reasons. The one thing I can guarantee you is all of you will leave here having got what you came to get. If you came for a word, you're going to get that. If you came for some mess, you're going to get that. If you came to show off, you're going to get that. Whatever it is you came to get, you're going to leave with that. The surprise is how you can get home and get disappointed when you only got what you ordered. If I go to a restaurant and I order one thing and whoever's eating with me orders another, I can't get jealous of their food if I ordered something different. If I come to church and I leave with my burdens lifted, with my anxieties calmed, with my faith restored, and you leave here in the same condition you came, maybe it's because you ordered that. I heard the story of a man. There were two men that lived door by door, side by side. One had a pretty successful life, brand new car every year, nice house, landscaped, sent his kids through college. His next door neighbor worked 3 jobs, had a 10-year-old car, struggled to keep his family together. The man that was successful passed away. 6 months later, the man with the 3 jobs passed away. When he got to heaven, the story goes, he saw his friend, his next door neighbor. And rather than embrace him, he got upset. Finally, he got an audience with God, and before he could even thank God, he was saying to God, "Why was you so hard on me? God said, excuse me, why were you so hard on me? He said, I don't understand. He said, I worked so hard, barely could make ends meet. This guy next door, my neighbor, life easy, one job, had the best of everything. And the first person I see when I get to heaven is him. Why were you so good to him and so bad to me? God looked at him and said, well, let me ask you something. Did you pray? He said, yeah, I prayed every day. He said, and what would you ask me? He said, I asked you to help me keep my old piece of car and my 3 jobs and my kids together. He said, I would ask you every day. He said, and I gave you what you asked me for. Most of us get what it is we ask for. I tell young people all the time, the most important thing in life is to have your goals set and set them as high as you can. Why? You can't arrive without a destination. If I leave here after the 3rd service, go to the airport, first thing that I need is where am I going? They can't even ask you for your ID. They can't tell you the price if you don't have a destination. Where you going? If you don't know where you're going, how are you frustrated that you didn't get anywhere? You wasn't headed anywhere. Once you decide where you're going, then we can tell you the price it's going to take to get there. Then we're going to ask for your ID to figure out if you are the person that can make the trip. But most of us never even start with a goal. You can't be successful with no goal. And most of us just walk around the airport of life, just wandering around, because we're not headed nowhere. And we become candidates for misery because we programmed ourselves toward nothing. Then many of us become the custodians of bad feelings and bad experiences and bad days. And we allow them to beat us into almost a permanent state of depression. Some of you sitting right here, afraid to live tomorrow because of what happened yesterday. Everything that has happened has broken you down and given you a psyche of depression. Somebody hurt you, and you won't let the hurt go. Somebody deceived you, so everyone's a deceiver. You got bad news, so every time the phone rings, you almost have a nervous breakdown. You wake up in the morning, what's going to happen now? Programming ourselves so that we can't be blessed by God. Paul knew this when he wrote the church in Philippians. He said, first of all, let me explain something to you. The life is not full of just one way. You're going to have ups and downs. I often say when I go to a burial at a cemetery, that they have the birth date and the dash and the death date, that usually it is incorrect. They shouldn't have a straight line. They should have a zigzag, because life is not a straight line. Life is full of ups and downs. The issue is not how you deal with the ups or the downs. The issue is that you can deal with the ups and the downs. One of the things I admired President Obama used to say during his campaign is don't let your ups get you too high and let your lows bring you down too low. If you learn how to be even, some of us over-celebrate good days. That's what happened to a lot of us with the election. We won 2008. A lot of y'all didn't leave the inaugural ball to 2010. Y'all still had your gown and tuxedo on, boogieing, and the Tea Party went to work, and we woke up And they almost flipped the script on us. That wasn't in Philippians, that was Sharpton, but Paul said, let me tell you something. I've been through it all. I've been full and I've been empty. I know how this thing goes. But let me tell you something. You can put aside all of your anxieties. You can put aside all your worries. You can put aside all of what you face. And you can achieve a peace beyond understanding. That's the ultimate salvation. When no matter what happens, you're at peace. And a peace that doesn't make sense. That's why it's beyond all understanding. Well, how do I get there, Paul? Think on these things. Program yourself different. Don't let the world give you the news. You give the world the news. Don't let the world tell you what's wrong. You tell the world what's right. Think on these things. Things that are good. Think about what God has done for you. If you every morning got up and programmed your mind to think on these things, it will set your day differently. That's why first thing I do every morning, I get up is prayer and then read scriptures. Then I turn on the news, go work out or whatever. If I turned on Morning Joe first thing, it would mess my whole day up. I need to get my head straight before I let Morning Joe get me mad. Or CNN or whoever. In prayer and supplication. Think about, well, what are you talking about, Sharpton? Well, there's trouble everywhere. Problems that we face at every juncture. But then when I stop and think about where God brought us from, when I think about how far we've come, man said to me last night, I don't know about this election. I don't know about the president didn't do as well as I think he should have in the last debate. I said, well, that may be true, but think about how far we came to even have a black president in the debate. When I walk in the White House, you see a black man, a black woman, and two black girls and the grandmama. And I think about how black slaves built the White House and never got paid, and how they're somewhere in their grave knowing that their work wasn't in vain. Think on these things. When I think about those that never thought they'd see the day that the symbol of womanhood in the free world would be a black girl from Chicago who brought her mama with her to the White House. When in our lifetime, we had to sit in the back of the bus, had no rights anyone was bound to respect, but now little white girls look up to Michelle Obama. I think about God promised if we be faithful over a few things, he'd make us ruler over many. Think on these things. If you think about how far we've come, it'll give you the strength to get through whatever little challenges you got. Because let me tell you a secret, you've been through more than you're going to have to go through. You've been through the hard part where you are now. So what are you worried about now? Think about where you was. I remember October 16th, 1995. I was right in Washington, spoke at the Million Man March. I remember coming off stage that day. Young man said to me, Reverend Al, I said, yes. He said, it's a great day. I said, yes, it is. He said, we beat them. I said, we beat who? He said, we beat the 63 march, where Dr. King talked about a dream he had. I said, why would you say that? He said, well, in 63, I read they only had 250,000 people here. And look at this, we have over 1 million. I said, yeah, well, brother, we do have more people maybe than they had. But we didn't beat them. He said, how you figure that? I said, well, you got to remember in 63, they came to Washington riding the back of buses. They had greasy brown paper bags with fried chicken sandwiches because there wasn't a restaurant that would sell them a meal. They had to sleep in the back of their cars because it was against the law for them to rent a motel room. Had to hold their bodies because they couldn't even use a public toilet. But because they came in 63, we flew back first class in 95. That's why I tell young folk, you're not worthless. People died and paid a price for you. They thought enough for you to lay their career, lay their life, lay their family aside because they felt you was worth the investment. And if nobody think you nothing, think how your forefathers thought that you would be the one to vindicate their suffering. Don't let nobody minimize you. Think on these things. But then it's not only racial, it's personal. Sometimes you need to think about what God did for you. You know, it's interesting. In my life, I've been through a lot of controversies. Gonna keep on going through them because I'm in that kind of work. But funny things happen that only God could arrange. About 13 and a half months ago, I was trying to get, after National Action Network's convention, I was trying to convince MSNBC that we should have a weekly show. President of the MSNBC kept meeting with me, trying out this, trying out that. Finally, he said to me, I don't want to do a weekly show. He said, I want you to do a daily show. I said, you want me to do what? He said, daily show. God sometimes got more for you than you think. I said, well, I never had a civil rights leader having a prime time show every night. He said, well, we're going to try something different. I said, okay, what time the show come on? He said, 6 o'clock. And you know, Lamel, I'm glad I don't come on at 3 o'clock. I'm glad I don't come on 9 o'clock. Reason I like this first year at 6 o'clock is I think about all of the folk that criticize me and all the folk that scandalize me and all the folk that say I wouldn't be nothing. Most of them get off work about 5. They get home about 5:30. Put their dinner on about 5:45. 6 o'clock, they sit down at the dinner table and they hit the remote and they see me. And I think about how my mama used to make me read that scripture, that he'd prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies.